up and going.
Kenny looked at it and thought they were disgusting, but.
Nobody today?
No, and that's kind of fortunate because it's already 1:30. Today, if Jim Franklin can come back, he will not be happy if we start this late.
We have something we need. Yeah, so let's do it now, so. Yeah, so we've got it all straight. Is there a person, huh? It's getting to be a lot
Yes, it is.
on one or two people. And we would like to cut back to, even if it's somebody wanted to bring sloppy joes, that's not a big deal. And we don't have meat, potatoes and gravy and salads.
You just do hors d'oeuvres,
Yeah, do something simple.
simple snacks.
Maybe.
Let's meet at 12:30 then if we do that, so we can get some lunch in us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Make it, say, even Tuesdays in the week, fourth week, be sandwiches, the first and the third be salad meal, and just make it something
And you
like
knew
that.
what you were gonna
Yeah.
rate that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
Is that, it's just,
As long as I know what to expect, then I'm not.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking. Yeah.
Charlie was underneath the cups there.
I don't think this was mine. I didn't look at it.
Yeah, no, I bought those for you. That's when you brought this here.
Well, we got it here.
Yeah, it was underneath there.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
They coached go that. That's nice pies.
Yeah.
and there's a second one in the storage room there too.
Okay.
And it's on Mickey's list to continue ordering those, so when they run out, let me know.
Should have on the outside and inside this little.
How we,
Because it looks like there's a little wrap there that to go into. Can you see that? Or it's best to throw it in here somewhere. You got all the boxes.
That was there.
I'll do it at the same time. Sort of like pizza boxes or something, right? Here, I'll hold this side down and you can do that side. Oh, got it. Boom! Well, some of the boxes were complicated
Oh.
and stupidly complicated.
This one did it in VA.
4.5. Even lays down exactly how many days each class took.
Really. So there's no reason for years.
He did one class for the longest any one class was 40 days, and all the others were 2 classes. Because at WDU, you can build your days. You just got to get through the curriculum and meet the competency standards.
Started on that kind of store out there. Doctors in 20.
Well, and that's just it. Like competency. I could do that. Like,
Well, in a world like that, you can test it and pass it. I mean, you're going to go into your own business, so if you want.
yeah. So I tell you, I never. I can't say I've done any classes at WGU, but if I ever was to do a secondary master's program, it's hard to say no to that. Oh yeah. The average student takes 2 years to do it, but he did it in 4.5 months.
Yeah.
Basically treating it like a full-time job. Which is my way of helping another thing I like about it. You do one class at a time.
Oh, so you want to study that?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it's so much better.
Step out 8.
Oh, I can't stand it.
Whatever.
Oh, that's just, and you're not going to shift gears every hour.
Keep track of tests. And
That's what I hated about school was like, you'd finally kind of get into the rhythm of something and switch to something else, and the subject had nothing to do with it. Like you go from math to PE to biology, and it's like, ugh. I am no fan of that.
I'm with you there.
So that sounds really good to me. And every semester is only $4,000, and you can do as much as you want
in that time period. So however little or however much you get done, that's what it costs.
Be good for Jonathan.
It's a good incentive to get moving.
Even just a basic business thing for him. He's gonna be self-employed, so.
Yep.
Be good.
Yep. I wish I would have had more. My parents didn't think I needed it necessarily, and they weren't wrong because I learned everything I needed from them. But looking back now, there'd have been things I would have benefited from by going through some basic business courses, especially the financial bookkeeping end of things. And I could see the benefit of it. Maybe not get a whole degree, but take those classes at least, something. I don't care about pieces of paper,
Yeah.
which I need to give you yours before you leave sometime.
Is it in your office?
No, it's in my house,
Okay.
sitting in my office, a bunch of other stuff.
That's where it'll be in line.
There's
too.
probably some
Sitting around.
CDs on top of it. I don't know. It's
Probably
there.
staying.
I don't think I put anything like that on top of it.
Yeah.
It's a nice looking piece of paper, but God is not going to be impressed with my credentials, so I don't care about them.
There was one church that wanted like a copy of my ordination certificate, and I'm like, I never got one. They're like, how are you ordained? I'm like, I was before the church, and I just laid hands, prayed, and ministered. And then I signed some tax document saying I'm paying a lot of taxes.
Yeah. If you need something written up, we can just throw something together.
That's kind of what I figured. Just put some random date on it.
Well, that's just the thing about what's funny about it. Religious organizations don't have any of those requirements. All of those requirements are self-imposed.
Right.
So if you don't impose them, they don't matter.
I figured for them, just because they were stupid, I was going to go online and get some ridiculous ordination. Do something random, like, here you go.
I'm going to leave for the day.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go show my house.
Oh,
She's a nice girl, very hard working. She's a nurse at Lock Haven.
oh, cool.
Yeah, she has a little 9-year-old boy.
Be a good house for her.
Oh, yeah. Her folks live down behind the gas station here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And her kid can just walk across the street to church.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's old enough to be a preacher boy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Take care, Shirley. Good
You
day.
betcha. Thank
Is this
you.
your purse under here?
No.
You didn't bring anything in? Okay. I was
No,
just
I
checking for
left
you.
mine in.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty, talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.
I don't want to do this anymore.
No.
And he asked me things like,
Well, leave this meat down here.
he said, how much that you're picking out?
Well, leave this meat down here.
Hey, mine.
Thought you all brought it down.
Yeah, it's fine.
Upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Josh grabbed that. I don't know what he's saying. So.
Y'all want to eat on it, it's in that little serving door.
Okay.
I can sit in it, there's bars, but I don't feel safe getting up, you know.
Yeah.
I and Paul don't either, we don't sit down before they control, so don't bend, like these all these surgeries. And getting it over the side of the country to get in, we had a shower, but it's, you know, all that, it's been a blessing to have.
I had when I was, working at the home health thing, I I noticed that she kept a dry washcloth over, in her, trying to keep the breach in the.
Well, Paul, we're going to have a really short Bible study.
It'll be real short.
Let's get this mist forward.
I never know. And with daytimers, I just let it flow as it flows. This is like the only group that doesn't have a strict timetable. So I kind of feel like it needs to stay that way because everything else is so rigid, you know. It's nice to have something that's not so serious because serious is not my primary mode of being.
You're around teenagers and you're super serious.
Yeah, I try to be at least 14.
And when I come for the kids, it's horrible.
What do you know about Central Christian College and St. Louis Christian College merges?
Well, some new information is coming out. The merge is about done in terms of records and student transfers. Some students are transferring to Central, others are moving on. I don't think that's going to change a whole lot because they're selling the campus down there and getting rid of it. So it's really just going to be a handful of more students at Central in the end.
Gonna be non-existent.
Right. That's where it seems to be heading. They were thought about keeping it down there if they had enough of an enrollment, but it doesn't look like it's there. I mean, that's why they're getting out now as it is, because it wasn't self-sustaining. And any private college has to be self-sustaining. So,
Where's that?
St. Louis Christian College has merged into Central. Really, everything's merging into Central. I think Lincoln's going to be next because Lincoln's down to just 2 degree programs. They're dying quickly.
That's probably leave that for.
Yep. I went there in 2000, the year 2000, and enrollment was about 2,000 people. And last year they were down to a little under 500. So the campus is way larger than they have the student population to support. And that's just the way things are now. And they're pretty pricey, and that didn't help them. So, I mean, I've never understood why you need things like secular accreditation to teach the Bible. I don't get that at all. I mean, that just raises expenses and costs and brings the world into what you're trying to do. And so I don't get it. Central is kind of a gray area in that regards. They do not have regional accreditation, but they do have national accreditation. So you're not on the same standards as all the secular universities, but you still have some secular standards. In my opinion, if you're just doing Bible, why bother with any of that?
Johnson Bible College still in existence?
It's now Johnson University, and it's mostly a secular institution now. Like, that's what's happened to a lot of them. They either become secular colleges or they die.
Brother Spurgeon was minister here. His daughter.
That's what Lincoln tried to do. They tried to become a university. They tried to have a bunch of secular degrees on top of their Bible ones, and all it did was dilute the existing pool. And once you start doing that, your student body is not going to be Christian oriented anymore.
Right.
So, like so far, Central does not offer any specific secular degrees. They just have cooperative programs with other colleges if you want to pursue that somewhere else. I'm not even sure I'm a big fan of that myself, because I would rather a Bible college just be a Bible college. If you want the other stuff, that's what the other stuff's for. Like, I don't go to a grocery store to buy toothpaste, you know.
Go to Walmart for that.
Yeah, and I don't tend to buy my groceries at Walmart, even though they have some.
That's the only place I can find halfway decent vegetables.
Also, whenever you get into Walmart, you don't have any of the high quality specialty stuff. It's just kind of get a little bit of everything that's just quality enough. So
So are we talking about switching this up next week, starting next week?
Fine, yeah, fine, I think.
Can we?
Oh, yeah. Just want to make sure.
We're not trying to do, we're just trying to be a little sensible.
No, you got to do what you got to do.
I mean,
Yeah. So just simple
Sure.
stuff.
at our ages, it's getting harder.
Yep.
I don't even wanna cook at home.
Yeah. So let's just meet at 12:30. Is that okay? And then you don't have to bring anything but snacks if you want to, and call it good. We'll chat for half an hour, and we might even get Bible study started on time.
Yeah,
We're a little.
But you can have lunch meat or anything like that.
I can.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just can't have the bread.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Just bread and cheese slices, or
And I,
meat and cheese
you know,
slices.
I've got plenty of hamburger, I can always make juicy burgers.
Keep it simple.
yeah, now Karen, you didn't want to cook it.
Right. See, keep it
That's only
simple.
one thing.
Yeah, but that's,
I mean, that's just
yeah,
one
but if
thing.
you have to do that, then I'll do and Shirley will have to, and.
Keep in mind, all the pressure you feel is on yourself. It's not coming from us. You're good.
Well,
You're good.
we understand that.
Yeah, we just felt like you guys need to have a meal, I guess.
No, we're
It's
good.
appreciated, but you don't
Well,
have to,
No.
of course.
we enjoy eating it, it's just,
Yeah.
and plus it's getting expensive now.
Right.
This much, but I mean, it's,
And honestly, if we had daytimers on like Friday instead of Tuesday, I usually have more time on Friday mornings and I could be contributing something, but Tuesday mornings is the beginning of my
oh, well,
week.
let's change this to.
There we go. Yeah.
Want to eat it.
Yeah, then you have to make what I make, but eat what I make. But yeah, Tuesday's the beginning of my work week, so it always is crazy on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So, yep.
Mornings are busy.
Oh, Lynn went to.
She answered a phone call. Yeah. This will be the shortest Bible study in the history of this church that I've ever taught. This is shorter than any youth lesson I have taught.
10-minute minimum.
Where we at? Where we at?
The book of John, plain John,
Plain John.
0 John,
Is it? Oh, London.
plain John. Yeah,
I got it now.
0 John.
Is it 5?
Nope, we're in chapter 4,
Okay,
and we are at verse 30.
okay.
Yep.
I had it marked, I didn't know whether it was 5 or 4.
You're fine. Now Shirley's left. This is our whole group, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. All right. Well, I will do my darndest to keep my comments brief, so that's fine. John chapter 4, would somebody read verses 30 through 34?
They went.
Go ahead.
Ladies first.
They went out of the city and were coming to him. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. So the disciples were saying to one another, no one brought him anything to eat, did he? He said to them, my food is to do with the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Now, this is right after Jesus met with the woman at the well. Remember, that's where we were last week. So that's the context of where we're at. Still early on in Jesus' ministry. They're in Samaria, so they're sort of in hostile territory. Remember, Jews and Samaritans don't get along under any circumstance. They don't have anything to do with each other. Typically, they don't even talk. I mean, we're not even talking business. They have nothing to do with each other. And so Jesus got done talking at the woman at the well. And remember, she went into the city and told everybody about Jesus and even asked the question, this is not the Christ, is it? So the whole area is sort of in a ruckus now because there's this talk that the Christ is here and that he's Jewish and he's come to Samaria. Now, have you ever been in a situation, family or otherwise, where a bunch of people didn't like these other people, but you didn't have any beef with them?
I do that all the time with John Hart.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. This is a common phenomenon. And I've been in that situation many times because I'm not from here originally. I've been here 20 years, but some of these feuds go back way before that. So somebody who had a problem with somebody else in this community from before the year 2000 still doesn't like that person, doesn't even like their kids. Like, I mean, this is a multi-generational grudge going on, and they don't even want me talking to them because that would give that person some sense of credibility in the community. Well, I don't have any beef with them. And sometimes I've discovered the other person doesn't even know the grudge is going on. They haven't talked in so long, they haven't ran into each other for so long, the other person doesn't even know they're being hated on. Which means the grudge is only affecting the person who has the grudge.
And it affects their life.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
the way they are and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it really does.
Now, the Samaritans were poorer than the Jews, and to this day, those who live around the Jews tend not to be as wealthy or as well off as the Jews themselves. So, do you think that some of the Samaritans wanted something to do with the Jews? I think some of them did. Now, they couldn't admit it, they couldn't actually do it, but I imagine that as time went on, the younger Samaritans were like, why can't we talk to the Jews? I don't have any beef with them. And that's how I often feel sometimes around here, is that I don't have any problems with this person or that person. But boy, this other person's really upset if I go talk to him. I don't care, by the way. I'm going to do it anyway. That's other people's grudges are not my responsibility. Now, if I find out that person is truly this terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person, maybe that won't work out. But I have found, because I'm from a big city and I actually know what violence and terror looks like, I haven't met any people like that around here yet. I've met liars and sleazeballs, but I haven't met anybody who's truly evil.
There's petty.
Yeah, it's 99% petty, and the 1% that isn't, still not on the level of what I knew as a kid or as a teenager. I mean, there's bullet holes in my parents' house. There are.
That's what you said.
The day I left for college, all the windows were bashed out of my car just randomly. When I went to high school, 2 kids died from fights with glass bottles. I mean, the world I'm from, I don't see any of that here. 0. So the pettiness that it is most of the time is kind of what this reminds me of. Generations of hatred, and hardly anybody can remember why.
I made you think of the hillbillies.
Yeah. So the disciples come back, don't really know what he was up to, at least not any of the details. And where is their head? What are they thinking about? What does it say? Food. Yeah, a bunch of guys. And just imagine that, you know. I've heard a joke, it's a little irreverent, but I think it's true. You know, the reason why Jesus had the Last Supper is because there was no other way to get 12 men together.
That's funny.
Oh my goodness.
You know, whatever works. You know, Jesus, is there going to be food there? Oh, okay, I'll be there. You know, that kind of thing.
Salt and suspicion. Bread, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, got to have an actual meal. Meat, got to be meat. So that's where their head is. And Jesus is like, he just had this amazing experience with this woman at the well, talking to a Samaritan woman, and has already managed to, in one conversation, spread the whole world throughout the whole town about who he is. Now that takes some skill. I mean, how many times have you had a single conversation that made a positive experience throughout a whole community? Jesus knew what he was doing, you know? So that's where his head is, and their head's in literal food. So Jesus' response to them is, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Now, I'll be the first one to admit to you, if I'm hungry, I'm not really thinking about anything else. And that's not good sometimes, because if you've got something important to do, or you have an opportunity to talk to somebody or do whatever, and all you can think about is food, you can miss an opportunity. And so I have to admit, when I read this, I was kind of convicted, because I was like, you know, I've probably missed some opportunities because I was hungry and thinking about food. And here Jesus is saying there are times when the work of God is enough. And that's not something I'm good at, but it's something for me to think about. You know, God created the human body in sort of a funny way. When we overeat, it stores extra energy in the form of fat so that we won't starve if we're a little late to a meal. And apparently my body has decided I need like 30-day supply. So I'm in good shape. I'm worrying about food for no other reason than I'm hungry. But I'm not going to die,
Right.
you know. And so I have to admit, when I read this, I thought, man, here's another place where I need to work on my impulse control. When I was first married to Kara, she doesn't get hunger pains like I do. And I remember, like, I'd be on my way to the refrigerator to get something, and she would be between me and the refrigerator. I could not just walk past her. That was not allowed. She expected me to stop, ask her how she was doing, give her a hug, you know, typical marriage love stuff. But I did not want to do any of that. I wanted to get something to eat. And she would get offended when I would do that. So now I have learned I have to control my impulse for the all of 15 seconds it takes to acknowledge her existence and give her a hug. See what I mean? So Kara was teaching me how to be more like Jesus, even unintentionally. Because he wouldn't let hunger get in the way of doing God's will either. So you never know who God's going to use to teach you. Might even be your spouse. Imagine that.
I haven't been successful.
Yeah, well,
Keep on trying.
it's Karen. There are tough nuts to crack out there. I have people all the time who ask me to go see somebody or try to witness to somebody, and I'll do it. I'll go see anybody, talk to anybody. But I already know up front the odds are against me.
That's right.
I mean, I already know that. And being a preacher, the odds are even higher because they know I'm the preacher. I've been here long enough now. Everybody knows who I am. So I can't go talk to anybody without their shields being up. It's already there. But I don't burden myself with their response. Whatever they decide to do in reaction to me is on them. I am genuinely caring and trying to be their friend and trying to tell them about Jesus if I'm given the opportunity. Most people don't take it. I used to sell things that were very expensive that people bought without hardly any effort on my part, and now I'm trying to give away something for free and I can't hardly get anybody to take it. That's the irony of being a preacher. Yeah. Sales was easier than preaching. Yeah. All right. Well, it's almost 2:00, but let's just try to get through this story real fast. Would somebody read verses 35 through 38, and then we'll have this story under wraps.
Do not say, there are yet 4 months, and then comes the harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, that they are white for harvest. Already he who reaps is receiving wages, and is gathering fruit for eternal life, so that he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this case the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor.
Okay, because of time, I'm just going to give you my 2 points on this. And if you have a discussion, just throw it at me. The first thing Jesus is talking about here is there is always something to do. Did you pick up on that? The harvest is actively available for anybody to go do the work. He's talking to his disciples, but this has been passed on to us through the scriptures that the harvest is here. Lift up your eyes and look on the fields. There are opportunities. There are times being a preacher, and you'll experience this even more in my position, Alex, here pretty soon, in that you'll go for a time without anybody coming to Christ. You'll have these droughts without any baptisms, and opportunities seem to be slim, and every opportunity you take isn't working out. And the Apostle Paul actually went through this in the book of Acts for years. Once he went into Roman custody, I think it was Acts chapter 20, somewhere around there, when he goes into custody, he never gets to leave custody again. He'll be in the custody of the Roman government until he dies years later. He has virtually no conversions during that period. Do you know how hard that must have been on him? To have been a missionary and to have traveled that part of the world for decades, and then to suddenly be completely limited in his ability to do the work to the point where he really isn't winning anybody? Well, did Paul give up? No.
I'm sure he did.
He kept going. If you look at even times in Jesus' ministry, there's times where nobody's responding. In fact, people are walking away. Shortly after he feeds the 5,000 in the book of Matthew, most people leave him. Now you would think you just gave them a bunch of free food, aren't they going to stick around? But do you know why they didn't stick around? Because they got hungry again, and Jesus said, I'm not going to feed you again.
So they left.
They left. As it turns out, most people do not have good motives. Does that surprise anybody? You know?
Not at this age, it doesn't.
Right.
Duh.
And I didn't come to church for good motives, so I don't really care why people come to church. I'm just trying to keep them there. If I can get them there, that's the first step. And then it's really between them and God from that point on. I can't sustain that forever. But if I can get somebody to come to church because I took them out to eat or because, we spent some time together or whatever it was. I mean, in my case, I chased a girl to church. And then I ended up keeping the church and getting rid of the girl. I mean, God will do whatever it takes to get us to the body of Christ. And then it's up to us whether or not we respond to that. And so the harvest is here. There's always something to do. There's always opportunities. But sometimes the harvest is slim pickings. And we can't burden ourselves with that. All we can do is just keep going. I mean, there's been years here where we've had 15, 20 baptisms. They seem to be happening week after week. And then there's other times where it's just a drought. And I have learned that just comes with the territory. It's almost like the church offering. There are times where it's whoop, and then there's times where it's whoop. And you know what? That's part of it. There's no such thing as a curve that just goes like this. It's always going to do this, and that's okay. I don't worry about it anymore. Used to bother me, and now it doesn't bother me.
But that's the way life goes.
Yep.
There are things that will come in and they'll be going good. You'll be in business, you'll be busy, you're making money, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
Yep.
Ups and downs.
Something I've been trying to prepare Jonathan for in self-employment is that there's days you work 12, 16-hour days and you make nothing. You might even lose money. And then there are other days where you make 3 times what you would make on a normal day. And it's that kind of variation you just got to get used to. And I think ministry is a lot like that.
Well, it's like gardening. You can't always be harvesting.
Yep.
Say when it's time to harvest and you're harvesting, that's great. But other times you're working the soil, you're planting, you're watering, you're working on trying to, and that's exactly what you're doing in the ministry.
Yep.
You're planting, you're watering, you're trying to grow something, and then people start coming to be baptized. Hey, some harvest is here.
Yep. And then some of the harvest works out and some of it doesn't. Like, you ever pick a really good looking tomato and then it turns out not to be a good tomato?
Oh, yeah.
Cantaloupe is especially famous for that. You never know if you're getting a good cantaloupe.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know until you taste it.
And that's what because I'll have people who come here, they get baptized and then they wander off or they go back to their old life or whatever. The ratio is about 1 out of 2. Hate to say that, but it's true.
A lot of that is people aren't well trained, and not that that's somebody's fault. Don't have to worry about
Don't
it
need to
again,
go to
and that's
church
it.
anymore.
They think they've
Yeah.
done what they need to do. They don't understand.
Right.
They just started.
Yeah, and that's some of it. As I've gotten better about that over time, the ratio hasn't changed. I was kind of hoping it would, but it still seems to be about 1 out of 2. And that's very frustrating. But at the same time, it's just like you said, it's just like harvest. Or like this year, we've had good rain. We've had good weather generally. It's been really good for the crops. But I think it was Virgil who told me that his tomatoes didn't come out at all. And other people's did. And I mean, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, kinds of.
Yeah, and you got tons of, and that's just it.
Today's canon.
In fact, I had a person at the Fiesta when I was there working in the cook shack who brought their produce to the Fiesta cook shack and said, please give this away. They had so much of it, but they didn't get what they wanted. You see my point? They just were able to grow certain things. And church is like that. Everything's like that. So that's my first point, is that there's always something to do. The harvest is always there, even if it isn't always what we can predict or even necessarily want. And then his other point is that there's people who have harvested or who have sown before you, and you owe them. And this is something that we talk about in youth group a lot. You know, that the FLC as a building, they didn't pay for. Those kids didn't pay for. They don't pay for the utility bills or the air conditioning or the heat in the winter. I mean, we get this amazing facility to have youth group in year round. And the reason why is because people you don't even know love you and paid for all this and want you to have it.
Some of them aren't even here anymore.
Yeah. And I want them to be grateful and have an attitude of gratitude, because once you have that cemented in your head, it changes everything for the better. Yourself and the group, if you can have a group that's grateful. You know, it's kind of like when we had pizza on the way to NYR and on the way back. That's actually, we learned that's a lot cheaper than just eating out, because you can, you know, get kids to choose their pizza flavor, and then you can consolidate that and everybody can eat out for like $6 or $7 instead of 15 to 20. But still, even when you're saving money like that, somebody else paid for that pizza. You know, that I've learned as an adult, my favorite food is free food. I don't have to pay for it. You know, that's gratitude. You know, be grateful for whatever you get that you didn't have to sow. So Jesus' point here is that we harvest things all the time that other people have labored for. And it's that attitude of gratitude at all times that keeps things moving forward.
But that's back to the thing of education. We need to be educated as Christians, but in our life we have to keep learning. We may, like us, forget sometimes. That's just part of life and part of being a Christian.
Right.
Until you get on the golden bridge.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. And I like how you bring that up. Like farmers tell me all the time, once you're done harvesting, then you got to fix machinery. Then you got to get ready for next year, and you got to start planning. And you know, it never really ends. It might slow down, and you need those periods.
You gotta feed
Yeah.
them.
But-
You got something to do all the time.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. Like that's something I try to tell kids. It's good when you don't run out of things to do, because when you run out of things to do, you lack purpose. And the good news is Jesus is saying there's always something to do for the kingdom of God. The harvest is always there. So in those periods of doubt, Alex, when you go through that, realize it's still there. Just keep going. Because I'll have people occasionally even ask me, we haven't had a baptism in a while, implying I'm not doing my job. And it's like, granted, there hasn't been, but it's not due to a lack of trying. Just every tomato I'm picking isn't any good.
Out on the street and drag them in.
Right. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to leave and take the fin to dance.
Yeah, we need to quit. Yep. All right. Well, thank you for giving me an extra 10 minutes.
I would like to ask that, you guys, keep someone in your prayers. Pat Coons, she's my neighbor.
Okay.
She's been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Ooh.
But they've, laid out a plan as far as what they're gonna do. She's a nurse, so she has a good understanding of stuff, and I think has a pretty good attitude on it. But, her husband Ernie was in my class in school, and then Pat was, a couple of years behind us, and then her sister's a real good friend of Kenny's sister. So,
Okay. Sorry.
Please keep Pat in your prayers.
That's miserable.
She's a nice lady. Yeah.
Yeah. No fun. All right. Well, hey, we will pray and close out. Alex, go ahead.
Father, thank you again for allowing us to be here, to have good company, be able to eat some good food. And Lord, we just want to take a moment to lift up Pat. She has breast cancer, and know that you have a will and you have a plan, and anyone can have. And just ask for your help and guidance on that. Be with us throughout the rest of the week and until we meet again. Love you in Jesus Christ's name, pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks, everybody. Next week, 12:30. We won't need an hour for hors d'oeuvres anyway. We're just doing snacks.
Yeah.